Well, we've been talking about trains this morning. Our trains are getting a makeover. It's all part of the government's move to renationalise the majority of the network. I'm pleased to say the Transport Secretary, Heidi Alexander, joins us now. So we've got this kind of quite patriotic branding for Great British Railways. I read that it's going to take 10 years to deliver, though. What's going on there?
So we're actually going to start to roll out the new branding at stations and on trains from next year, but we want to do this in a way that's going to provide value for money for the travelling public and for the taxpayer. I think people want me to be focused on getting the basics right, making sure that the trains turn up on time, that they're as likely to come on a Sunday afternoon as they are on a Monday morning. And so I don't think I would be thanked if I was on your show this morning announcing that we were spending hundreds of millions of pounds on repainting 3,000 trains across the network.
Yeah.
But it is an exciting moment because we're debating in Parliament today the Railways Bill, which is the most significant piece of legislation to affect the running of the railways for 30 years. We've announced the fares freeze for next year, but we're also going to be putting the railways back into the service of passengers, not being focused on profit and shareholders. And as we bring those train operating companies back into public ownership, we're determined to build a railway that people can rely on and be proud of. And this new branding is part of that.
Yeah, I think you're fair in saying that, you know, a new paint job is nice. But the thing that everyone cares about is, the reliability of the service, but also the cost as well, right? You know, we just had a look at some train prices this morning. You know, Glasgow to Manchester return £72, Leeds to London at 7 a.m. one way is £160. That's obviously what people really care about. Are rail prices going to come down?
So we've announced the rail freeze for next year on regulated fares. So for season tickets, for peak returns and off-peak returns between big towns and cities in England, prices won't be going up. For 30 years, prices have gone up in a fares increase. These savings will be very significant. If you had put up fares by RPI +1, which is what has happened in the last couple of years, and let's remember under the Conservatives, fares went up by 60%. The savings, which will mean people can keep more of their hard-earned cash. If you're commuting from Milton Keynes to London on a flexible season ticket, you'd be saving over £300 a year, £57 a year saving between Bradford and Leeds because of what we're doing next year.
What about the nationalisation? I mean, will that have an impact on prices, or actually it's more about the freeze, that's the key thing? So
we've already got 7 train operating companies in public ownership. Fares decisions are taken every year. We do still subsidise the running of the trains to the tune of about £2 billion every year, and that is on top of the over £10 billion that we put in as a country into maintaining the infrastructure, the tracks and the signalling. What we want to do is provide better value for money for people and sweep away some of these inefficiencies that have existed in the privatised system. So in bringing the train operating companies in, we save up to £150 million a year that would have gone to the private companies in management fees, and we can also make sure that we've got more integrated management so we can strip out some of that duplication.
Sorry, I don't want to... I know this is really important what you're saying. I've just got so much stuff on transport to get through, you know. So it's one of these real kind of topics that impacts everyone, right? I mean, some would say, right, that privatisation of the railways never worked because there's no competition. Like, if you're having a terrible service, you can't just say, actually, I don't want to go on this train line, I'll switch to this one. I mean, it's kind of the same with water companies, though, right? Do you think there's an argument for nationalising the water companies?
So what we're able to do, because of the way that the railways operate, is that at the end of the contracts that train operating companies have with the Department for Transport, we are bringing them into public ownership without any cost. Without any cost, Sophie, to the taxpayer. And in some of the contracts, there's, in essence, a break clause. So that once
so that's not the same for the water companies, is that what you're saying?
It's not the same for the water companies. And I think that when public finances are stretched, we've got to prioritise. Now, we said in the manifesto that we would renationalise the railways, bring the trains into public ownership. We're not wasting any time.
I want to ask you about something that splits opinion. It splits opinion on this programme, I should probably say, with us as well. Line bikes. Right. Some people think...
I sometimes ride one to work.
Do you? Yeah. I use them as well, right? You know, full disclosure. And you know, it's not just Line, there's lots of different companies. Some people think that they are brilliant, they reduce congestion, they're more eco-friendly, they get people out and about. Others say they're a complete nuisance, they're blocking pavements. It's really bad for disabled people, for pregnant women, or for people with prams, and also that they're dangerous, right? People use them without helmets and all that kind of thing. What's your take on electric bikes?
So my view, if we can get more people cycling, that's a good thing, because I actually think some people have described it as a bit of a miracle pill in terms of public health, because actually, it means that you're doing a little bit of exercise. And I do think in some cities, some of these new e-bikes, which can be hired, have attracted a new group of people to using them, which I think is good. I do think that we need to make sure that across the country we've got really tight parking enforcement being done. So in some local authorities, they use geofencing, which means that the bikes can only be parked in a very specific area. Now, if I cycled to work, I couldn't park a Lime bike outside the Department for Transport, but I can park it down the road in an area that is specifically dedicated for it.
Is that a good thing then? Do you think council should impose that you can only park your Lime bike in a certain place?
I want to see more councils using that sort of really sophisticated technology so that people who are using the pavements aren't having to try and clear these obstacles when they're strewn around on the streets. Now, I do think that the operators of these hire bike schemes have real responsibilities as well, because, when they're stolen, when, people are using them not as part of the hire scheme, but they sometimes use them recklessly without insurance, I think that can be a problem as well.
There's just one other thing I want to talk to you about, which is the Baroness Amos report into maternity failings. I remember your campaign, actually, about maternity services at Lewisham Hospital, something that you were very involved in, and, another example, I guess, of maternity being kind of at the bottom of the pile. Giving birth is like bringing life into the world. It's the kind of best moment of your life, but it could also be the worst moment of your life at the same time as well. Why is it that we're just consistently getting this so wrong and failing so many women and families and babies?
You're totally right to raise it, Sophie, and I think the Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, has been really concerned about this, because if you look at all of the reviews and reports that have been done over the last decade, I think there are over 700 recommendations about how to improve maternity care, and yet we're still in a situation where women often don't feel that they've been listened to with respect to their own care, and where in some cases there have been appalling failings. I think it's right that Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, has said that he is going to set up a task force which he will personally chair in the new year, so that when the work that Baroness Amos is currently doing actually comes to an end, we're in a position to move fast and act, because I think mums, dads, bereaved families are fed up of reading about recommendations. They want to know that nobody else is going to go through the trauma that they've gone through.
I don't want to sound too glib about it, but do you think if men gave birth, we'd be in a different situation?
I think that we haven't listened to women in the way that we should in terms of their experiences of their own care. And I think, Wes Streeting, the Health Secretary, has talked about how that is a failing on behalf of the NHS, and it's something we do have to urgently correct.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Heidi Alexander, speaking to us this morning.